Hey everyone, Taylor here, just responding to Tyler's vlog post about William J. Perry and the article, as well as the chapter that we read in Evans. I believe it was chapter 5. I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it, answer some of, or all of Tyler's questions, which were good questions. And I think most of them were taken from, I think all of them were taken from the article that we read this past week. So, question number one was do you feel that the transition from dualism to relativism is linear or cyclical? Personally, I think that it is cyclical because there can be a point where the person who is within that dualistic position questions whether the information received is factual or not, or questions whether I guess questions the authority of the person who is giving the information, say a student to a professor. Um, yeah, and I also believe that temporizing can happen. That was mentioned in Evans a little bit, as well as in the Perry article. Temporizing can also happen where development takes a timeout period. And I believe at this point is where the transition can be cyclical because it says that in the Evans chapter that horizontal dec- decalage, I think, can occur, um, which is kind of like the lateral movement through kind of like the one stage that you, so just developing more through one stage, but before I guess you transition to the next stage, or before you even get to that transition period, you're kind of more so developing within like a dualistic um, position. And I think this is where the transition can be cyclical because an individual can begin to realize that all that the authoritative figure, i.e., the professor or like an instructor, does not have all the answers, and that can affect their own thought process. So, just my, what I was thinking about when this question was posed is that, say for example, the example that I think that was given in the William J. Perry article was that, 2 plus 2 equals 4, which is a fact. Everyone knows that. But, to say if you're in like a philosophy class, and I can't even imagine, I wasn't in a philosophy class in undergrad, I can't even imagine the types of questions that were posed. But I guess, if the professor, if I'm in a dualistic position, the professor says the sky is blue, or I mean, excuse me, that the sky is like purple. And if you take that as fact and you take that as fact, in the classroom because you see him as the instructor, so he knows all the answers, he or she knows all the answers, then you go home and then you're like, wait a minute. I looked outside, the sky is blue, but the professor said that the sky is purple. I'm just going to stick to what the professor says because he's the one with all the knowledge. He's the one who's leading the class, so I'm going to stick to that. And then the next day you go back and you still see that the sky is blue. So your thought process is kind of going back and forth. I feel like back and forth are in kind of like a cyclical um, motion because you're trying to figure out, is the professor right? Is what I see is right? Is the sky purple sometimes? Did I not just see it? Maybe he knows what he's talking about. Maybe he's pulling my leg. Maybe he's trying to get me to think about what is really true and what's not true. Maybe in certain, just kind of like with moving into relativism is, in certain contexts, maybe the sky is purple during, a certain type of sunset or aurora borealis or whatever. So it just depends. So I think that, even before transitioning into relativism and into things that are dealing with context, that some opinions are valued more than others, or some facts are truer than others in certain contexts, then, but before you get to that point, you're going through this kind of like cyclical motion, like back and forth, like I'm not really sure, and then it comes back around, you're like, well, maybe, and then you go back to, so yeah, that's exactly kind of how I thought of it. And it can also be a time where they are developing, yeah, like I said, within the stage, teetering back and forth between what they believe is right or is wrong based off of their own thoughts as well as what the instructor is giving them. Yeah, I'm just kind of going off of my notes here and trying to add a little bit in between. The second question that was posed was, how does figure one compare to figure two um, in the model of development that was drawn out in William J. Perry's article? And was there anything that you would add to figure two from figure one that would make it better? The one thing that I did notice that I would add from figure two to figure one is the retreat and the escape areas, because I think that figure one was very, very linear. Like, you're going through these thought processes, but then you're moving on to the next. You're moving on to the next stage almost completely. Whereas figure two has retreat, where you kind of, hold on one second, I can look at it. Where you, let's see, what does it say? Where retreat is where, the avoidance of complexity and ambivalence by regression to dualism colored by the hatred of otherness. So because, you hear all these other opinions, you're like, no, I don't even want to deal with that. So you retreat back into what you believe is right and wrong. And I think that's really important because when in difference to figure one, because it kind of doesn't really say that a person can do that, which is, in reality, people do that all the time. I'm right, you're wrong, instead of moving on to maybe thinking that, oh, maybe this person is right in some other way or form. And also escape, which is alienation, abandonment of responsibility, exploitation of multiplicity, and relativism for avoidance of commitment, which I take as that completely like just completely escaping development altogether. You're not, I think it's different with retreat, because retreat, you're acknowledging the fact that someone else is wrong and you don't like that, so you go back into what you believe. Whereas escape is, let me turn my phone off. Escape is, I think it's more so of an abandonment of taking that responsibility on. So not even, so just kind of like, it's kind of like an anything goes type thing when it comes to facts and maybe even opinions. So I think those two are really, really important. It says that those two things happen around, I guess, like stage 5, which is relativism. And I think that's really important that those two things were added in figure 2, or those were placed in there. Let's see, just kind of what I read from my notes. I think that these are important because it makes a development less linear and stage-like, which is, in my opinion, better for development. I believe that going through processes while you're within a stage is the best way to move through a linear process. So, you might retreat for a while and then you might come back type thing. And then once you figure out that you're actually, dismissing other people's, dismissing otherness, then you can kind of, come back and regroup and reflect on what exactly you were doing and then move on to the next stage or the next position. Let's see. And the last question was, have you or someone you know been through this transition? And I'm assuming that it's the figure 2. I don't think I took a note on that one, but I'm gonna go ahead and answer it. Yeah, my freshman year, I've definitely been through dualism and kind of going through that transition of, I'm going to sit here and listen to and take notes and, do the homework, not question what the teacher says, because he knows everything, he or she knows everything. And then I kind of went through this, I guess, kind of like within the transition period, kind of questioning the facts that were given from my professors, going out to go find my own information, conjuring up my own opinions and my own thoughts about certain subjects. Relativism, I think that I'm in that stage. I'm not really sure. I think so. Sometimes I do go back and say, hey, I'm right and you're wrong, but I acknowledge that, and I'm able to listen to other people's opinions and see it for what it is within the certain context. So I think relativism, I think that's, I would assume, if we're talking about where these certain positions would be when it relates to age, I would say that relativism, dualism would be like freshman year. I think we kind of discussed that already. Freshman year, and then relativism moves out into junior, senior year, almost even graduating from college type thing. So I've definitely seen others. I think a lot of people move through it, kind of like what Tyler said. I think a lot of people do move through it, move through the positions, kind of in the same way, because, when we're younger, we're taught that, we come to school to learn, and we're learning from the professors and not to question authority type thing. That's what we're taught all through high school, as, all through, schooling before we even get to college. And so then when we kind of getting to this point where it's just like I'm finding my own information, I'm coming up with my own opinions and thoughts about a certain subject, then that's when we get into, I feel like that's where the stage is kind of split, or that's where people kind of either they differentiate, where someone might just be listening to the professor and thinking that's, the professor is always right, all throughout college type thing. And then when they get, when they graduate, and maybe then they're starting to gather their own information about certain things like world events, or things that they're at their job or anything like that. Whereas even a freshman could go through this, hey, I'm going to go and find the information for myself, and kind of come up with my own thoughts and opinions about this, and listen to others' thoughts and opinions, and kind of put those together with my own type thing, and just go through the motions at a different time. But I definitely think that college is, obviously, student development theory in college is definitely a place where dualism and the transition to relativism happens. But I think that it's, of course, just kind of like how Jacob said, some things are very different and some things are also the same. So I'm going to stop talking now. I think I answered all of the questions, and gave, some pretty good information to support my opinions. So that is my vlog. I hope that you all have a great Monday night. No class tomorrow. Yay! More time for reading and other celebrations of knowledge. So group 2, this is Taylor again. Hope you all enjoy. Good night.